On this episode of Locked On Canadiens, would Michael Pezzetta clear waivers?
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to episode 1148 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing on YouTube and wherever you subscribe to podcasts. Doing so, make sure you don't miss an episode and it supports us on the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. I am Ian Boisvert, also known as @MaybeIt'sIan. I am joined by the incomparable Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick. Laura, how are we doing on this very quiet news day from the Montreal Canadiens? Not a whole lot happening.
I'm really excited because we're introducing a segment that we've been talking about since the day Ian signed on to do the show. So I'm so excited for the listeners to get to experience it, and we're going to make it as regular as we can make it.
Yeah, I think I'm very much looking forward to it. I've probably put a little too much thought into it, but we're going to figure that out as we go. Despite the Canadiens having a pretty quiet day on Wednesday, there's still a lot for us to digest coming out of the first two preseason games of the year. While they were off on Wednesday, we should expect an update on Caden Gooley on Thursday. If you remember, because I certainly forgot, he had his appendix removed. So we're looking at an update from the Canadiens on him and his status. So look for that on Thursday, and we'll be back to break that down on Friday's episode. But for the rest of this episode, we have, like Laura said, a new segment coming up that I'm really excited for you guys to see. We're going to take a look at the power play from the preseason openers and see if there's anything we can glean from those. And we're going to look ahead to Thursday's game against Toronto for what we hope to see from the players we expect to be in the lineup. But first, we have to start with this new segment. It is a segment we are calling Rumour Round-Up, where we are going to take a look at some of the trade and player movement rumors that are surrounding the Montreal Canadiens, because there are plenty on the internet. And while we will digest the potential validity of them, I think what I'm more excited about is to talk about just how fun they are, because a lot of these trade rumors are just complete garbage and also really lame. So I found a couple of rumors that we're going to parse our way through. I want to start with the one that I think it came out a few weeks ago that I think was the catalyst for this becoming something we needed to do regularly. It comes from a website, BVM Sports, and the headline of the article is Canadiens eye Shane Wright in proposed trade for $39 million defenseman, that being Mike Matheson. They are proposing, with no sources, by the way, there was no like reason to believe this is true, that the Canadiens and the Seattle Kraken would entertain a trade for the guy the Canadiens passed on and who slid fourth overall to Seattle in Shane Wright and Mike Matheson. So here's what we're going to do, Laura, for all of these trades, because this is Rumour Roundup and it is Western themed. We are grading these on a scale of 0 to 5 yeehaws. And we're doing it for two categories: how entertaining the trade rumor is and how realistic the trade rumor is. So let's start with entertaining. When you hear that trade or that potential trade rumor or that completely made up trade rumor, what do you assign that? Is that fun to you?
No, because okay, here's the thing. Like, on principle, I find entertaining should have some sort of fun element to it.
Sure.
This seems like it screams narratives all over it, right?
Yeah.
Shane Wright comes with narratives. Like, that's the way. Like, from the day that he dropped to fourth, it's all narrative. Like, this guy's life is going to be narratives until he, accomplishes something like winning a cup or, getting one of those trophies at the end of the year, one of those kinds of players, So for me, it's not fun. So I don't rate this a 0 on yeehaws, though, because I do get the entertainment value of having that guy, of having both the guy that you selected at first overall as well as the guy you passed over, both on the same team. And it would be funny if they played together, et cetera, complementing each other. That would be really funny, right? So there's that entertainment. So I'm going to give this 3 out of 5 yeehaws. Am I doing that right?
Yes, I that's a perfectly succinct way of doing that. I gave this a 5 out of 5 because I think this is absolutely buck wild. And for someone to sit down and think of this and type it out and publish it and not once think this is insane is awesome entertainment. Like that, I feel like the best, most entertaining things are the things we spend the least amount of time on sometimes. I think that's what happened here. So 5 out of 5 yeehaws for me. What about the realism of this trade?
0 yeehaws for me.
I gave it a 0.5 because I think like there's a world where the Kraken are probably super interested in Mike Matheson because he's a pretty good defenseman, but I just don't see that being equal trade value for a guy they picked 4th overall and they still have very high aspirations for.
Right. A guy who's not, you can't rule out his development. I also really quickly think that, sorry, I know we've got a couple more rumors to get to.
Oh, keep going.
Just any rumor that comes from a Habs associated, like a Habs fandom associated publication that includes trading Mike Matheson away, I immediately am deducting 2 yeehaws, like right off the bat before we even start analyzing the rumor. Like that's just the way it is.
We're grading on a curve now. So it's drop 2 yeehaws every time that happens.
Mike Matheson's traded away.
It's so true because like he played in his first preseason game in that game against New Jersey on Tuesday. And the Mike Matheson experience was in full effect in that, everybody on Twitter was talking about how great he is and simultaneously how annoying he is to watch play for your team because both can be true.
Yes.
All right, let's head to the next one. This going to the man of the hour from Tuesday night, our 2-goal scorer, Michael Pezzetta. Renaud Lavoie on BPM said that the Devils have always been interested in Michael Pezzetta, and the Devils would love to see Pezzetta on waivers. So what do you think of entertainment value on this one? Where are you feeling about potentially Michael Pezzetta getting claimed on waivers?
I'm gonna say, like, again, like it's a 2 to 3 for me, maybe a 2.5 for me. Yeehaws. Just because it's not particularly fun to have him get traded away from this team, or sorry, for this team to lose him, but also for him to get claimed off waivers, and also for a team that's boring AF.
Yeah, I also have this as a 2. Waiver claims are not all that exciting, unless placing a player on waivers isn't all that exciting unless it happens to a guy of high profile who's sort of being relegated to the American Hockey League as a quasi punishment. But that's not what we have here. We have a, tweener NHLer going on waivers. It's hardly news. What about the realism aspect of this? Do you think he does end up getting claimed if he goes on waivers? Like, do you think he'd be a fit in New Jersey? Like, I think he'd be a great fit there.
Yeah. So for me, I'm giving that 4 yeehaws just because I haven't heard anything from the New Jersey Devils, but there's no reason not to believe Renaud Lavoie. But also, like, if I'm the New Jersey Devils and that's a player that I have access to, I feel like, he'd bring energy to the team, and that's definitely what they need.
Yeah, agreed. One more for you. Marco D'Amico at RG Sports writes that the Canadiens are making calls around the league. They're pretty active on the phones, which we hear all the time, but that they're looking for clear upgrades at positions of need, and that right defense will get the most attention. Entertainment value on this one.
If it's something that we know that they need or that they're looking for, I don't know that it's super entertaining, but the potential for a new player to inject into the lineup to fill that need is high. So I'm giving this one 4 yeehaws in terms of entertainment. Yeah,
I think I kind of swing the other way just because it's so vague. Like, I read the whole thing and I kind of at the end was like, what is he talking about? Like, not that I thought it made no sense, but just like, what kind of players are we looking at? The Canadiens.
Which line, which pairing, for example.
Exactly. He does mention in the article that, David Savard's contract situation may necessitate them getting another player of experience on the right side. But for now, there was, no one that they're explicitly interested in. So I think I went with a 2 on this one for entertainment. What about realism here? What do you think we're looking at?
I went with a low score for the same reason you did, because it's not concrete, right? Like, it's not a specific player that they're particularly interested in. It's not something where Kent Hughes came out and said, we're still looking to shore up right D. It's just something that we as a community have identified that the Canadiens need that. So I like, that's why I rated it low. I put 1 yeehaw for realism.
Yeah. I think, I swung in the other direction on this because I think there's nothing more realistic than saying the Montreal Canadiens are working the phones, because we hear it all the time. Every single week when they do the insider trading on TSN or anything like that, we're hearing about how Kent Hughes is always on the phones. And that existed before Kent Hughes even got here. It was Mark Bergevin is one of the most active general managers in the league. It's like, yeah, I would hope so. This is their job, right?
Yeah.
They're supposed to be doing this.
Yes. Also, it's 2024. They're not working the phones. They are working the group chat.
Yeah, they're all in WhatsApp.
Yeah.
There's no, like, they're not picking up a rotary phone. Well, Lou might still be doing that. Lou might.
That's probably why everyone still has a landline, is so that they can call Lou.
Nah, Lou's got a BlackBerry for sure. For sure, still working the BlackBerry. All right, that does it for our first entry of Rumour Roundup. I hope you guys like that. Sound off in the comments about what you would rate these on a scale of 0 to 5 yeehaws. Up next, we're going to take yet another look at the power play to see if we can learn anything from the first 2 preseason games, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. I love being in the center of the action, whether that's taking in a concert or enjoying a night at the ballpark. It's just more fun being there. We are so close to the start of the NHL season, and I have my eye on a few games I absolutely need to get to. The place where you can go to get the tickets you want is Gametime. We're big fans of Gametime here thanks to their all-in pricing. This is a setting in the app that you can toggle on, so Gametime tells you exactly how much you'll be paying to get in. No hidden fees. Plus, with their seat views, you know what kind of action you'll be able to see. And with their lowest price guarantee, you know you're getting the best deal for your tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's Gametime. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, you're probably enjoying the return of football to our Sunday afternoons. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com. All right, we are back. Before we jump back into our show here, thank you for making Locked On Canadiens your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Laura, I feel like the thing I talk about the most is this dang power play, because for the last, 10 years, it's been terrible. We have started this season, preseason, with it also being terrible. Are you worried yet about this? I don't know that I'm getting worried just yet, but boy, it kind of stinks like it did last year. Like, it feels like all the things that were wrong with it last year are wrong with it now.
It feels like, so when I was with Habs Eyes on the Prize, that was a meme. Anything that came along, I'd be like, can it fix the power play? It was actually like, no kidding. It was my dating profile for a while. Can you fix the Habs power play? Can't believe I'm saying that on this podcast. But also, like, I moved to a different show. I was on SiriusXM, and that was still a meme. And then I started doing this podcast, and it was still a meme. Can X, Y, Z fix the power play? So today, the question we're asking is, can Lane Hudson fix this power play? I'm not worried. I'm just not hopeful, if that makes sense. Like, if the Canadiens were heading into a contending year, if they were, if this is the thing where we're like, we need them to win a couple of rounds of the playoffs, I would be worried because it could tank the season or it could tank their playoff run, right? I'm not worried today because the Canadiens are at least a year away from even getting into the playoffs, potentially even more, and the Canadiens are a few years away from contending. So I'm just, at this point, I'm not hopeful. It's kind of like, I'm not even cautiously optimistic. I'm neutral.
Yeah, if you've ever heard the expression, no one will fix it until they know it's broken. We know the power play is broken, so that fully doesn't apply. However, if this team were to, get really close to a playoff spot, lose out on the last day of the year, and we were operating at 11% on the power play, the summer, the plan immediately shifts to fix this power play. Because, and, assuming that's the biggest thing that went wrong, that's where they need to focus their attention. As far, when we watched Mike Matheson QB the top power play unit against New Jersey, a game that they went 0 for 8 at the, on the power play, I saw a lot of people start to be like, oh, we need Hudson as the first power play wave. He needs to be the top power play quarterback. And this is a sort of situation where I think my heart and my brain are pulling in different directions, because my heart agrees with them that I would love to see Lane Hudson quarterback this top power play. But my brain tells me that as long as Mike Matheson is here, there's no shot of that happening. I just think that that coaching staff respects him too much to take a rookie with 2 NHL games played and put him on the top power play unit instead of Mike Matheson. I just don't think that that's a reality for this team right now.
So I have a question for you, Ian. And my question is, so we've talked a lot to so many people, so many guests, including yourself. We've talked amongst ourselves, whether it was with Scott or with you. Do you think the issue is the personnel that they're putting on the power play, or what they're doing with that personnel? Because we're talking about this team is probably not going to move. It's very highly likely that he's not going to move. Marty's not going to move Matheson off of that first power play. But you look at like who they're playing with, because when I first saw your rundown for the show, I was like, all right, we're going to ask ourselves this question. And for me, it's like, who's Hudson playing with, right? Like, who's he queuing up? But also, like, are they putting these players in the right positions? Are they trying anything new? Are they just doing the exact same thing with the exact same players over and over again? Which to me, that's what it looks like most of the time.
Yeah.
But my question is everyone being used optimally?
Well, it's tough to tell that from the first 2 preseason games, because in the first preseason game, we saw probably 1 or 2 players who are going to be on the top unit. And in the second game, we saw, everybody on that top unit was there except for Yoel Armia, who, God love him, he will not be on the top power play unit in October. And if he is, something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. So I'm still holding out hope, because I think there was one thing that I saw that I think gives me hope that this will eventually work. And it was that, we talked with David St. Louis about Patrick Laine being in that one-timer spot, right? Well, the problem is that's the spot Cole Caulfield has occupied since he got here. But when we saw Cole Caulfield in the second preseason game, he started on the opposite wall. And he didn't stay there. He made his way over to the wall where he usually shoots from. He was at the point at one point. He was in the slot. From what I see, and maybe it's just because it's preseason and these guys have not, the structure is not there right now, but it seems very fluid. It doesn't seem like people are staying and parking themselves in one spot, which is like what used to drive us nuts about that power play, was they would just sit and they would just bump the puck to another position. Like they were playing like bubble hockey. Like the guys just don't move and they just push the puck in a different direction. We didn't see a ton of that. It hasn't clicked yet. There were some close looks, but like that's, to me anyway, like the thing I'm most optimistic about is fluid hockey, because it has never looked fluid. It has never looked comfortable. And I'm hoping that they take that to heart and they try to fix the darn thing, sooner rather than later, because it snowballs, right? You have a couple games where you go 0 for 4 and people are starting to go, geez, we could have had more points if we put a couple of those goals in.
Right. And that's dangerous, because then you're talking about how many wins you get or how many tiebreaker games you have. And then, would you have made the playoffs 2 years ago, or, the difference between making the playoffs and ending up in that middle no man's land. For me, I didn't necessarily clock that until you pointed it out. And to me, what that shows is the personnel is willing to make changes and they're willing to try new things. It's kind of up to the coaching staff to now push that and instill that in all of the players, right? And especially for some of the veterans, they're going to go to what they're comfortable with. And sometimes you never know. Somebody might look better. As for Hudson or Matheson, like I would continue to put Hudson on that second wave. I didn't love that last year. Like you saw randos there all the time. Like, you know, like it felt like a little bit of a revolving door, especially like, like Justin Barron, like plays 3 games with the Canadiens and then he gets like a few power play shifts. And it's like, you need to have a solution for that. You need to have a game plan. And part of your game plan is your players.
Yeah. And, we've talked about, Nick Suzuki being on an island. That was incredibly apparent on the power play because he was on that top power play unit. And then if they didn't score, it was like they were waving the white flag. Like we're just punting until everybody can get rested. And then Nick, Cole, and Uri can come back on the ice. So I completely agree with you that PP2 for Lane Hudson is not the end of the world, because if he can make some noise in the limited time that he gets there, we have proof of concept that this works, right? And if Matheson isn't getting it done on that top unit at that point, that's when we have to start talking about a switch. But preseason game 3 and onward, it's way too soon to start making that call. All right. That's it for the power play. We're going to step aside for a second. In our last segment, we're going to talk about what we want to see from the Habs in the lineup for Thursday's tilt with the Leafs, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. And that's one of the things I like the most about Indeed, the confidence that you will not only fill the position quickly, but that the candidates you are matched with will be high quality matches. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility on Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right. After Thursday's game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Montreal Canadiens will be halfway through their preseason schedule. I believe 6 is the fewest amount of games an NHL team is allowed to play in the preseason now, so they are getting in and out of there quickly. We'll probably start to get some cuts soon after that. They obviously play the Leafs again on Saturday night, but let's look towards Thursday's game first, one step at a time. We don't know the lineup of that game as of this recording, but we can pretty safely assume that it'll look something like what we saw in game 1 against the Philadelphia Flyers. So I have 2 lines that I want to, sort of figure out what we expect to see from them, and then a couple of individual players as well. So we'll start with what that top line is likely to be. Doc, Newhook, and Laine. We were pretty excited about seeing them in their first game. Pretty excited about the results. What are you looking for from them in game 2?
I would like to see them score a goal. Just because I want, yeah, I like for that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Like I loved what I saw from them in the first game. They came with a lot of energy. Like it's clearly guys, we talked about it in our game recap. They're back from injury. They're definitely not playing scared. We were very encouraged by that. They were excited to be playing and they gave it their all, unlike most veterans who coast, right? But I would like that to be rewarded with something that gives them confidence, because I think that especially players that have been around as long as Patrik Laine, you probably look at the preseason as sort of like a practice, it's like getting back in game shape. It's also an obligation for them. But like for me, for something so low stakes, for him not to be able to score, I'm a little bit worried about the confidence aspect of it. I would like to see them, just be rewarded for their efforts with a goal. They came close last time. It's just going to be fun, and I want to see the fans get excited about Patrik Laine. I want something from that.
Yeah. I mean, when he touched the puck every time in that first game, the building vibrated, which is just, again, like we talk a lot about when Kovalchuk came here and it was like, this is the first true star we've had since Kovalev. And it's like, we got end of career Ilya Kovalchuk in Montreal.
Yeah, how many games was that? Like 19?
Yeah, and then they flipped him anyway. And then it was the COVID bubble and the world ended.
Yeah.
Montreal knows elite talent. We just haven't had a ton of it. Like whenever McDavid has come into Montreal and he does something crazy, the crowd like gives him the respect. He's just like, they will ooh and ah at an enemy player coming in here and doing something cool because they respect and love the game. Now they have a guy on their team who they think can do that for them. Yeah, I would, every time he would touch the puck, I would stand up. So I'm excited for them. I completely agree with you. Get on the board. Laine, Doc, Newhook, any one of them. Just get something to feel good.
A power play goal.
There you go. That's 2 birds, 1 stone. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Let's take a look at the second line from that game, likely to be the third line in Montreal this year. Dvorak's line of Christian Dvorak, Joshua Waugh, and Joshua Anderson. They scored in their first game. What do you hope to see from them in this game against Toronto?
So I think last time we were a little bit harsh with Dvorak, but the reason was because everybody else displayed a lot more effort than he did, right? We saw positive vibes. I'm gonna call it, because like whatever they did, whether they scored, whether they had the energy, whether they looked good after injury, everything like that, everything was a positive vibe, right? Josh Anderson, like the positive vibe. Joshua Waugh, can he fix Josh, right? Like there was a lot of positivity. Whereas with Christian Dvorak, we didn't see a lot of that. We didn't see enough from that. Yeah. So we were a little bit harsh. So what I'm looking for is a little bit more from him, and also like just the idea that Josh Anderson can put together 2 games in a row. That
unheard of.
Right? So I'm looking for more of the same from them.
Yeah, same. I think, if Joshua can, turn around the career of Josh Anderson, man, that guy's going to make a boatload of money on his next deal, because he could be sort of the fix-it guy. You could put anybody next to him and he's going to get their game going right. Yeah. And I mean, the goal they scored together wasn't just a fluke goal. Like Anderson made some skill. Anderson made a great cross-ice pass to Joshua Waugh, who then immediately returned the favor and got him going on a breakaway. Like that takes, some kind of skill and some kind of situational awareness to know where each other are. If after, a few shifts, they already have that, I'm excited to see how that chemistry grows. I really, everyone in this fan base is very hard on Josh Anderson.
Including us, I'll admit it.
Including us, absolutely. The salary, what this player commands, we need to see more from him. That does not mean we are rooting against him. I will never cheer against Josh Anderson.
We want to see him do well.
Absolutely, whether it's for this team or another one, because he seems like a great guy. It's never personal, but it's become, he's become the Rennie Bork of the team. There, we're remembering another guy. We're going to remember one in a couple more minutes when we get into our trivia. But a couple more players here. We'll go pretty quick. Oliver Kapanen, assuming he plays in this next game, what do you want to see?
I want to see more like people being shocked at how good he is.
Yeah, I just want to I want him to prove that the first game wasn't a mirage.
Yeah.
Right. Do it again. Okay, you did it once. Do it again. And once you do it that time, do it a third time. Like you need to string a bunch of these strong efforts together to force their hand.
I want him to make it hard for the Montreal Canadiens to figure out what to do with him next.
That's what every coach says in the preseason, right? Is like, we want them to make this decision hard for us. Yeah. So more power to you, Oliver Kapanen. Lane Hudson, what do we want to see there?
I just want to see Lane Hudson play. I don't care what he does. I know I'm going to like it.
That is literally what I have written down. I just want to see Lane Hudson.
Also, for Toronto to keep their grubby hands off of him.
Yeah, please. Adam Engstrom.
Ooh, I like it. So Adam Engstrom, the first game, showed why he's so good, but also showed why he's so green. We talked a little bit about keeping his head up, et cetera, et cetera. I think situational awareness. I want a little bit more situational awareness from him. Not positional awareness, but situational awareness, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Just with a player like him, show that you kind of belong, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not the floor. My expectations for him aren't all that high, and that's not because I think the player is not a good player. It's just I don't expect him to make this team. So if you come out here and make some noise, like you've exceeded our expectations.
Yeah, he's a short ways away. So like I want him, like his positional awareness is good and that he knows where he needs to be, which is not always true of defensemen on this team. Situational awareness, like where the game is going, I feel like he was like a step behind the last game.
Agreed. Justin Barron.
I just want Justin Barron to show me that his potential is not wasted. I got criticized a little bit because I was being a bit harsh on him. But like, look at your competition for this for this NHL spot, Justin, and act accordingly.
Yeah, we're harsh on Justin Barron because the situation demands it, right? Yeah. Like he's running out of time. This is his, and we're not the only ones who think that. Like that is a pretty standard thought. We're not breaking any new ground there.
There's no yeehaws associated with it.
Zero yeehaws for entertainment. That's as as meat and potatoes as it goes. Last one, Caden Primo, assuming he gets time in this game.
I just want him to not get lit up. I think
Yeah.
it's too much to ask for them to continue to not allow any goals. Particularly, I don't know who Toronto's going to play in that game, but they've got so much firepower on their top line. I'm sure will split it up, or we'll see somebody we don't want to see. So I want him to remain confident and solid.
Yeah, I think playing calmly, he looked very calm in that last game. Do that again, even if you get scored on a couple of times. I'm more so interested in process than result at this point in the season.
Exactly. Also, real quick before you get into the next thing, don't he and Caden Gooley look somewhat alike? Like, the more I stare at them, the more I find similarities between them. I don't know, listeners, you tell us.
They just start meshing together. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these young guys just, I don't know what it is, but they all just seem like the same hair, the same face. A lot of them, like they're like create a player, build a player in video games or whatever. All right, let's hit up our trivia and then head out of here. Yes, the last question was, name the player who followed this career path: Chicago, New York Rangers, New York Islanders, Colorado, Montreal, Toronto, New Jersey, Nashville. And this one was solved by the man who used to sit in my seat, Scott Matla, who texted me and said the answer is P.A. Parento, and he is correct. P.A. Parentovechkin. Similar one here. We have 2 games coming up against the Leafs, so that's our theme here. Name this player: Anaheim, Winnipeg/Phoenix, Chicago, Edmonton, Montreal, Toronto. So I hope Winnipeg/Phoenix gives you some kind of idea of what you're looking at as far as timeline, but I'll repeat it one more time. Anaheim, Winnipeg/Phoenix, Chicago, Edmonton, Montreal, Toronto. So good luck with that. Hit us up in the comments if you have figured it out. Until then, we're going to sign off on this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in and for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, head on over to the Locked On NHL podcast for around the league coverage of the entire NHL. As a reminder, we are free and available everywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to Locked On Canadiens so you don't miss an episode. You can follow the show on Twitter at LO_Canadiens. You can follow us on Instagram at Locked On Canadiens. Email us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. You can find me at maybe it's Ian. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.